Greetings, pilgrims. Welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today I've got something pretty awesome for you. We are creating some fully procedural skyscraper materials here inside of Substance Designer, and this is the 2017.2.2 version, so you will need that in order to grab this SBR file for you, and you can follow right along. But not to worry, I'm going to go ahead and show you all the steps to recreate this yourself, and I will provide the models that help to facilitate this, because we have some models with some very specific unwrapping which helps this out. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll take a look. So here we have all of our nodes. Yes, it looks like a lot. No, don't worry. We're going to go through it piece by piece. So bring back our 3D view here. You can see this is a custom model that I've imported that has all of the special things I was talking about, where we have various layers and then they're all copied and pasted. So that's why we got a little bit of repetition here, but that's okay, not to worry. You can also create your own model here that follows the same pattern, and you'll be able to create an infinite number of combinations here. You won't have any repetition whatsoever. Okay, so let's jump in, and we're going to take a look first at our mask build and the IDs and talk about how we built this up. So if I double click here to take a look at our mask, let's take a look at this. As you can see, he's in two main parts. We have this part here, this square here, and this is the actual side of the building. And then this set of squares here is the roofs. So if I zoom in here, you can see that we have sides of the buildings, and then up here we have the roofs. And I made a mistake with the model here. I didn't properly weld my seams on this version, so not to worry, that's where these lines are coming from. But it is a seamless texture, so you have from here all the way around the corner. And there are three different types in here. We have a corner piece, we have a straight piece, then we have this kind of center fill area, and those are represented here. Corner piece, straight piece, and this is our center fill. So the way we built this out is I wanted to make sure that these would tile vertically, and then also horizontally we just wouldn't get any seams, and then I needed an area for the top. So I started with a 2048 by 2048 texture, and I said, what's a large amount of space I get here and still have some space here? So this is a 1536 by 1536 divided into eighths. So that means this is 1536 by 192 times 8 gives you 1536 again. Then down here in the corner, this is a 512 by 512 for our top pieces here. And this is designed to be kind of a background element, but I made these textures detailed enough that if we zoom in here, you can see there's actual blinds in the windows. So if you do happen to get pretty close, or if the camera flies by, then you'll be able to see some of these nice details. So the way that this works is each layer, each actual floor of this building corresponds to one of these rows of windows here. And then each one is just copied and pasted above itself, and we can rotate them. So what I've done is the first layer, layer 1 here, is the first set of windows. But then layer 2 is the second set on the second floor over here. On the first floor over here, rather. And then layer 3 here is the third side, and then 4 is the fourth. So as you copy and paste the whole row up, you rotate by 90 degrees. And as you do that, you get this spiraling effect that goes all the way up. And that makes sure that we don't have things like this duplicated right over top of themselves on either layer. Now these happen to be, as I mentioned, duplicated because I just wanted to create some height here to show you different height variations. So that's what that is. Okay, so with that set up, we have to split out our masks. And I purposely did the colors on and off here so that I could do some overlaying in order to check and make sure that my textures are working properly here. You don't need to do that. You can just make this one solid color. But for me, I've done a color to mask, and I've chosen each of those colors and then combined them so they have this square. You could also achieve the same effect by using a shape node and then crunching it down, and we're going to do something similar later on to do the roof. So just some shortcuts there, and then here are the three sections of the roof tiles masked out from this, choosing each of these colors and then just leaving these here. I like to put all of these into a group, a frame by itself here, so that I could refer to these multiple times throughout the build and say, these are my ID masks, these are the original masks that I brought in from Photoshop to design this, and there you go. Okay, so let's talk about the roofs first, then we'll work our way down the buildings, okay? So over here for the roof, I wanted to create some kind of a rooftop gravel that was a little different than what I usually try. So here I start with my fractal sun base, which I really like. Transform 2D to kind of shrink it down a little bit. And then here what I'm doing is I'm blending that with a blue noise. If I undock that. So blue noise looks like this. And then I high quality blur grayscale, just kind of blur it a little bit, and then blend the two together. And what you'll notice is if I go back and forth, it's a little subtle, it might not show up on the video, but here's the normal fractal sum base, and then I'm going to blend that with this. And it starts to look a little bit like a carpet, but when you blend it down and put it over top of these roof tiles, I think they looked really nice. So that's the trick there. So I'm going to recollapse these just so that they're out of the way. So that's going to become our just kind of like a gravel, general concrete kind of texture that we're going to use throughout. And this is set to a blend of 65, and I'm blending it with, now we need our shape. Okay, so our edge build over here, again, like I mentioned, we start with a shape node, just a square, nothing special. Throw it into the top portion of a blend node, and you can see here I've cropped everything down except for 0.05 on the left and 0.05 on the top. And what that gives me is this little bit of an edge along here. So let's do an invert grayscale, and now you can see we have white where we want white. And what we're building right now is we're building this corner, okay? So let's bring that over here, and I'm gonna overlay that with a color. And the color is just barely not white, okay? Then over here, coming from the first one that's not inverted, I'm going to blend this with a different color. And this is going to be the color, so we're building up this height. So this is going to be where you would like stand, if you're going to jump off the building to here. You know, you'd stand here, but then if you step down, you'd be on this. This is a little bit lower, okay? So let's blend the two together, and you see what we get here. So the lightest value is being highest up to the camera. And this is just our colors, but it also happens to work out for our height. So let's transform 2D. We're going to scale this down. I think I did I divided by 2 multiple times, and then I moved by 0.5 and 0.5. And that gives you a perfect kind of tiling rows of 4x4, because we're then going to mask that out and take just one portion of this. All right, so up here we're going to blend those together, and then here we're going to take what we want out of this. And what we want is over here, these are our rooftop blend nodes, and these are coming from our mask. All right, so what we're doing is we're combining these. So these first two, we combine them together, then we're going to combine it with our third, so we get just that threesome all together there. And that we're going to bring up here and say, you know what? I want to take this that we've already created, and I want to blend, and I want to cut out just that area. So what we're doing here is, this is our shape with our colors. We pass it up here to get the concrete over top of it, and then bring it back down here and say, okay, cut everything else out. Very good. All right, now our normal map build is pretty simple. So we look at it here, it's taking from this shape and turning it into normal map, and I am using the normal Sobel. I've been having a lot better luck with those, and just things tend to look a bit crisper, so that's what I've been using. And then here, this is to crop it out, because we're going to be combining this with multiple other things. So let's crop out just that area again using our mask. Our roughness build is actually levels of our texture, of our diffuse here. So I bring that into a levels. You'll see here I crunch down the values a bit. So drag that white flag all the way over to about here. And you can see here, so this is roughness. So we want this to be very rough. So it needs to be very white. But we don't want it totally rough. We do want a little bit of variation in here, and that's what we've got going on. So that works out. Okay, our metallic, you can barely see it. But what I've done is taken the white here and crunched it all the way over to here. This is a levels node, by the way. And this means that it's almost black. So it's just got a little bit of sheen to it, which it really shouldn't have. Technically, it's not metallic. But I think it looks a little bit better if we catch just a little bit of a highlight, especially since it's going to be a background element. Just a little bit of a shape definition is kind of a good thing. Okay, and down into our height, we're going to use that same thing for our height. And then our emissive is black. There is no emissive color to this. So that's all set for the rooftop pattern. And the reason that's the most important thing that we do up front is the rooftops are used by every single building. So that means that we need to have that really solid, and we need a plan to kind of fold that into every single rooftop. And the way we do that is with a multi-switch. So if you come down here, this is our final base color, right? What we're going to do is we're going to blend that with, and this top element here is always going to be the rooftop element. And then it's going to blend it with whatever is fed into this multi-switch. And this multi-switch, you can see the 3 lines coming out from this line here, this one here, and this one here. These are all pulling from the other 3 types of buildings we're going to build. You can see one of them here. So that means that we're taking one of those 3 types of buildings, the diffuse, and we're blending it with the roof diffuse to get our roof tiles, and then saying that's the final output. And as you can see here, we do that same thing for every single type of map. Okay, so that's how that works. Now when you build a multi-switch, you have a couple parameters down here. Input number means how many inputs do you want to have. So I want to have 3. And then input selection, right here, sorry for the Windows thing is in your way, but input selection says what is the currently selected input. And that's input selection 1. If I were to set this to 2, all of a sudden you'd see it change to the other one. And our preview gets weird here because we have a mixed blend. Then I can set it to 3, and that's our third one. Okay? For right now we're talking about 1, so let's leave it on that. But that's how the multi-switch works in case you're not familiar. And that's how we're going to preview all of our final outputs here. Alright, so let's jump over to, let's talk about the blinds real quick before we do our office lit. So this is our office lit. So this is a dark building, and some of the offices are lit up at night. People are working late, working for that promotion. And in some of the windows, we have, these are, again, my model is upside down with the UVs here, but these are blinds in the windows. And I've got some windows are half blinds, and some windows are full blinds. There you go. So we need to have blinds in the windows. So how do we create those? It's actually pretty simple. So down here, what we've got going on is we have a gradient 2, a gradient linear 2. So that means we have dark to white to dark. And I'm going to transform, and I'm going to scale that down quite a bit until I get something very much like this. Just rows of black and gray, or white and gray, white and gray. Then what I'm going to do is come down here and create this is a tile generator, and what I'm going to do is say very specific values here, 8 by 16. So I need my 8 top to bottom, and 16 is fine. Then down here, this is where we get to get all of these individual settings. My intersize X is going to be a 0.1, and my intersize Y is going to be a 0.04. All right, and that's going to give me the spacing between the windows. Then I think that's all we do here. Pattern specific 0.02, just to make it very small. Okay. Now you'll notice then I do the same thing again here, but I've changed my settings. So let me go up here and show you. I'm now 8 by 32, which means I have twice as many going this way, which means that when I do a mask and mask them out, which is at the bottom here, I'm going to choose random mask of 0.95. I only want a few of these lit up. That means that some of these are going to be half and some of these are going to be full. And when I put the two together, I should get a mix. So when I put these together and I blend with a subtract, so I want to take away the ones that are common to both and leave behind just individual windows. Some are full and some are half. Look at that. Okay, very clever. So we're going to subtract from the half on top. I don't think it really matters, but subtracting from half on top means that if you have a full window and there's a half, it's going to subtract half the window, and that way we get a better effect than if we had full window subtracting from a half. You wouldn't get any window at all where you should have half. Okay, hope that makes sense. Here was I was playing with some different ideas here. So I'll leave my experiments behind so you can kind of see what I was thinking when I was doing that. So now we're going to use this as a mask into here, and this is just blending a copy from there. So now what we have is kind of our setup for our blinds. This is just the raw blinds. We're now going to blend them in with everything else. Okay, so let's go over here and take a look at how we did the rest of this building. So first thing we need is our pattern. We need to know how many windows across, how many down, what's the size of these dividing bars, what's the size of these dividing bars. So that all starts with our pattern. So first we get our reference. So here's our reference image. Okay, and we've got a couple of images here where we've got some offices are lit up and they're different colors, and here's the blinds, and the blinds halfway down. So we have our reference, so now let's start building it. So we're going to begin with another tile generator. Lots of tile generators for this. 8 by 16 is our default pattern. So that is 16 down, 8 across. Then down here, our intersize X is 0.1, and our intersize Y is 0.04. And that gives us this kind of separation. All right. Pattern specific 0.02. Nice crisp edges on things. And then I think that's it. We don't need any masking just yet. Okay, perfect. Now, we also need our crossbars, which will be these bars that go through the windows. And notice them here, 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 and here. So we need those. So let's do another, you guessed it, tile generator. This time it's 32 on the X, but only 1 on the Y. We just want it to go fully up and down. It's going to cut through everything because every window has them regardless of whether or not it has anything else going on. Okay, now we're going to determine which windows do we want to be lit. So this is another tile generator, 8 by 16, same settings, 0.1, 0.4, 0.04, pardon me. And then down here, same settings here, pattern specific, 0.02. But down here is the important part, is our mask, 0.83 on the random mask. And that means we're selecting some things to be lit and some things to be hidden. All right, we're doing quite well. Now, to figure out how to get the different colors in the windows. This was a little tricky, and then I thought of this idea, and it turned out to be a good idea. So what we're doing is we're taking an image, and I'm actually taking one of these images here, one of the ones that are designed for your like kind of cube mapping inside of Substance here in order to see different lighting environments and different lighting conditions. So I've taken one of these, and it's the industrial room. I figured it looked the most like an office. You know, there is some furniture, there's some general lights going on and things, but we're not going to use it in any way the way that it was intended to be used. We're going to throw it into a transform 2D, and I'm going to scale the hell out of it. So I scaled it all kinds of up and sideways, and I couldn't even begin to give you the numbers because they've all been distorted by time and space. But what I want to do is just create a general smattering of light and color in different areas, okay? Then I'm going to blur it, and I'm going to blend it. What I'm going to do is blend here and cut out from it my pattern here. And I'm going to say only where the white is, which is where the windows are. Makes sense. Show me what this looks like in those areas. And you get this kind of thing. Okay. So now let's throw that into a levels. And we're going to crunch the levels around. And this is what you get. This is really cool. So what this gives us is different colors and different light values throughout, but it's only in the areas where our windows are, which makes perfect sense. So now, if I take this, and what I'm going to do here is blend, and I'm going to say, I only want, this is interesting, I'm going to put black over top of, I'm going to put black in the areas only where my, see I made an invert here, only where my lit windows are not, okay? So the idea is that it's black everywhere else, and if I put that on top of this, then this is what you get. Looking familiar? So now it looks very much like the windows are lit up, like they're doing things, like people are busy working late at night. Cool. Now, we're going to add a little bit AO to our windows, okay? So what I did here was, this is a polygon 2. So polygon 2, sides of 4, gradient of 0.35, invert gradient of true. And I wanted to create this sense of, you know, the old drawing of a room where you draw a square here, you draw a square here, and you draw the lines connecting them, so it looks like you're looking down into the room. So we got that going on with our gradient here. Then I'm going to transform 2D this, and what I did here was I just scaled it up just a little bit so that the edges were not totally white. I wanted a little bit of gradation. Throw this into, yes, a tile generator. 8 by 16 again, right? But then we're going to take that mask that we've already decided upon. We're going to say which ones are lit up. And let's only take those. And this is what we get now. So every window that is lit up has this. And then, if we blend that on top of our color selections here, you get some pretty interesting things where it actually looks like a little bit of softness into the room. And we should probably blur this a little bit more. Sometimes you get a little bit too much squariness looking. But I think it looks pretty fine once we've added everything on top. Okay, let's add the blinds in. So the blinds here, you can see, those are only on some windows. And you can see here it's right side up. It's my model here that's messed up to where it's upside down. See? So don't worry about that. That was my mistake. This is just an example to show you what it looks like. Your model will be better and it'll be awesome. So these are correct in the texture, so no worries there. Then we're going to add our crossbars. So here we're just going to kind of blend those in on top. And there you go. So we got our blending going on. We got our crossbars. They look so good. This looks really good. This side view looks awesome. Okay. Now let's add some frames. So the frames are these things. And you can see I invert grayscale from our normal pattern node. I'm going to invert grayscale that and put it into here. And then when I put those two together, now we have our kind of frames on top of everything. All the windows are framed. Excellent. Okay. And then these are the final outputs here. So let's go through those quickly. I do have this transform 2D node. And what this does is I use this all over the place. This is a Transform 2D node that is designed to take our full square pattern, which goes the full 2048 texture, but we need to scale it down to fit a very specific area of our ID mask. And I can't just mask it out because then you'll get fewer windows. You won't get the right windows and our math wouldn't really work out. So I did some math here, and it's 0.165 by 0.165, and I scaled and brought it all within that perfect square there. So when you do a blend and you put your mask from this, see, our ID mask of all those areas, when you put those together, this is what you get. And this means that this works, and this is following all of our guidelines, and then here it leaves room for the roof tiles later on. Okay? So when I say this is our area scale, it's going to scale everything to that area, and we're all set because we use it all over the place. Okay. Moving right along. Another normal map, Sobel, Transform 2D. This is our area scale to get it into the right area. Let's invert it, and then we're going to color it. We're going to cut it out, and it's ready to go. Okay, so this is a levels coming from way over here for our original pattern. This is for our roughness. We're going to do a levels there and a levels here, and this levels is coming off of our invert, so we can get a little bit darker and blend one on top of the other using this guy as a mask. And now we have, for our roughness, area scale, cut it out. So now what we have is these guys are going to be a little bit more rough, and the window is going to be a little bit less rough, which means they're going to give off a little bit more reflection and such. And so that's what you get going on there. Okay, metallic. So we want things to be very metallic for this because we want a lot of reflection, okay? So we're going to do a levels, we're going to area scale it, and then we're going to just cut it out. So there you go. So the windows are more metallic than these. So it's still metal, it's still reflective and shiny, and there you go. Height build, this guy's pretty simple. I'm going to take from up here, do a levels, and kind of crunch it down a bit. As you can see here, we're going to move that white all the way over to here. That means that this is lower than this, which is perfect. That makes perfect sense. So now our emission build is pretty interesting. So we're going to borrow from over here when we first cut out our colors for the windows. Pardon me. And then this is just an opacity drop, so we can control how much that comes out. And this is a good node right here to parameterize, because then you can take this and say, here's exactly how much or how little I want in there. Transform to area scale it, cut it out, it's ready to go. Okay. And then once we've completed all these, we're going to hook up all of our 1 inputs to here, 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 and here. And that way, when we select 1 from any of these nodes, we get this first building type. Okay, let's talk about building number 2. So first up, let's go to our nodes here and let's change this to 2. 2 is a pretty simple one. His example is pretty easy. It's just a building where it's basically a mirrored surface. So there's not much in the way of blending colors, creating blinds, all that fancy stuff. There we go. Okay, so now we're all set up to preview building 2. So here's building 2, right over here. So let's first take a look at our reference. So here's our reference image. So basically a building that has windows, pardon me, a bit of a seam between them, but basically every panel is a full reflective mirror. Now this is not exactly this picture because I would need that skybox, and these windows are square and these windows are rectangular. But other than that, it's the same thing. So tile generator, and what we're going to do here is a 16 by 8 again. No interspersing that I can see, but a pattern of 0.01. Then what we're going to do here is do an invert grayscale right away. But you notice, if I zoom in close, there's a little bit of this grayscale variance. So this is very light but not white, and this is kind of a darker gray, and this is kind of a in-between gray, and then this is a black. So if I do a levels on this and crunch this all the way down, so start with the white, click and drag, and it will pull this gray one with you, and crunch it into this corner until you get white and black. All right, so it's kind of disappointing that a direct inverse of this, but then again, this was not full to begin with. So we're going to crunch that all the way down. Now, our diffuse build, we need 2 different colors for 2 different things. We need a color for the spaces between the windows and a color for the windows themselves. So this is for the spaces between, and if I click this and drop it out, you can see I made it totally black. And this is for the actual windows themselves. drop it out. You can see I just did an eyedrop from our reference image and picked, kind of a middle ground. So there you go. And when we blend the two together using this as a mask, I'm going to put the crossbar, or the little seam on top of this, using this as a mask. You get this. And then we're going to area scale, and that's our diffuse build. Normal, again, just a Sobel, and then we're going to transform to do the area scale. And then roughness here. So this first one, we're going to be, let's see, is he even connected? He is connected. Okay. So this guy, we got black on top, and we're just going to area source that from this as a mask. So only in these areas to get that very, very dark. All right. And then we're going to get this, and this guy is white color. And over here, he's pulling from this mask up here. And if you notice, this goes off to the transform to get the area scale, and then I said, okay, I'm going to go down here and do this. But you notice that this goes off and this goes off. I actually changed my mind. They actually swap. They cross the streams right here. So this actually becomes our metallic, and this becomes our roughness. Because that makes more sense, that this is metallic. We want very, very metallic here, not very here. And then this, we want extremely rough here and not very rough here. So just kind of flip-flop these labels. But if we take from here and do a levels, you'll see here that the black is now here, so I just kind of flipped these. I moved the white all the way over and the black all the way over, and then move this a little bit off center. And then blend to kind of cut that out, and because sometimes if you just take just this node, I still get problems, so I have to put them through a blend node. But that guy's all set. We don't have to area scale him because he already came from an area scale. So then our height here, which should be a lot smaller, we should grayscale this down, but essentially, as long as this is brighter than these lines, we're good to go. So there you go, area scaling down, and then there is no emission for this one. And that is that for those buildings. Okay, time for building number 3. One last go. Let's take a look. There we go. Okay, so input number 3, please. Input 3. Now, this is a slower method doing it like this, but you can, through code or through some clever nodes, you can create one node that you can just tell it which input you want, and it will go through and select all of these. Okay, so here is our final building type. Pretty cool looking. I think it turned out really nice. All right, let's take a look at our reference to begin with. So this is our reference. So we have dark windows here with these kind of concrete areas in the middle, and these concrete areas are divided into 2 sections. These bars here and this middle section here with the square type repeating pattern. So that's what we focused on there. Okay, so let's take a look at how we go about doing that. So to begin with, we're going to borrow the glass from our building number 2. All right, so we're borrowing that glass pattern. So that's all of this in here, but we made some changes. So this guy is actually 16 by 1. But if you notice, if I go all the way to the top, it kind of gradates off. We don't get all the way to the edge. So I did a transform here and just scaled it up at the top and the bottom to do that, to make sure it goes all the way to the very last pixel. Okay, so I'm going to invert that grayscale, and I'm going to do a levels. And I'm going to crunch everything down, and that gives me my black and white. Okay, same kind of trick here. This is a color for the lines. This is a color for the actual glass. Put the two together, and that's what you get. Then we need to build up these lines in between. So these two, this strip, and then all these in here. So this guy is a 24 by 1, and again, he should use the same trick. I should do that to it as well. Transform, oh I do, there you go. Transform, but I think this is our transform, yeah, this is our safe area. So we're going to scale that up like that. Then we're going to scale this down. Oh, this is the area search, I'm sorry, I did get it, there you go. And then I'm going to blend this into here, but you notice that I'm coming off of a really weird looking pattern here. But what I get are all these lines in here. So these are my lines in here to make these squares. But where does that come from? So let's talk about that. So what we needed was essentially 2 sections. We needed all of this and then the glass, and then all of this and the glass. I needed kind of like go one then the other, one then the other. So here's what I did. I took a shape node, square, put the size on Y down to 0.5. Then I did a transform. I moved it negative 0.45 and I scaled it down, I think like 5 or 6 times. So now what I have is this one on off kind of pattern going. Transform to move it up to our safe area. There we go. And now I need to get some other things from this. I need to get that middle section this section, cut out the middle of this. So to do that, I go down here to a bevel, and I'm going to bevel inwards by a negative 0.02. All right. Then I'm going to levels to crunch all that together to kind of close up that mask and get rid of all that gradation there. Then I'm going to bring this down here to an invert grayscale. So I'm now getting the whites around that area. And then this guy is coming from here. I'm going to blend. This is a subtract. So I'm subtracting this from this to get this. So now I have just that middle area, and I have a mask for everything. So now it becomes pretty simple. So if you come up here, this is a safe scaling. There you go. Then I'm going to pump that into foreground color. So if we look at our foreground color here, this color here, and this is on a multiply. This color is the color that we're going to choose for this whole area from here down to here. And we're starting in the background. Okay, and then from that, we're going to choose this as our mask. There we go. Now we go to the next one. We get this intersection figured out. That intersection is off of this color here, and that is going to be a screen. And then this mask here is coming all the way from down here. This is that final mask we created, which is just that middle area, which is also the same mask we're going to use for these lines that we created, as you can see. Okay? Then this final thing we're going to put on top, we're going to put these guys that we created on top. And these guys, we're going to do a multiply to get those lines in there. Then, just before we're finished, I'm going to borrow that grit that we made, that concrete grit that we're using for the top, and I'm going to overlay that over top of this so that we get a little bit of concrete look in there, but not on the glass. So our mask for that is very specific. It's going to come from here, only the whites. Okay, then we have our normal build. So let's take a look. So this is a levels version of this guy. Okay, so this is just these middle areas for right now. And I'm just going to move the white in here to make it a little bit darker. Then I'm going to blend on top of that. This guy's going to go on top, rather. Yeah, this guy is this. It's going to go on top of this. And there you go. So by putting a copy and using the mask, I can put a darker shape on top of a lighter shape without having to lose any of the colors that I want. What I want is for this to be further away from the camera and this to be closer to the camera. And that's what we get. And a normal Sobel, and let's invert that. There you go. And that goes off. And I don't know if that gets properly scaled up. We need to check that. Okay. Roughness is pretty simple. I'm just going to make it so that the concrete areas are perfectly rough and then the rest is glass. So let's make it not rough at all. Then let's bring that down here, and I'm going to invert that. And then I'm going to levels that rather, and pull it down just a little bit. This is for our metallic. We don't want these guys to be fully reflective. Let's turn it down just a little hair. Then our height build. Height build is pretty interesting. So we're going to come from here. All right, that's a good starting point, right? We're going to blend, and we're going to blend on top of that. We're going to blend from all the way up here. This guy to get our lines, okay? But we're only going to do that for these areas, because that's where the lines should be. So if we look at that, we get all of that combined together. So there you go. That can be our height just fine, because now what we have is the windows should be, pushed forward, probably just as far as these are, and this and the lines in between can go into the distance. That's perfectly fine. Then our emissive, once again, we have no emissive color. And there we go. So that's everything. We have so much going on here. Three different building types, along with different windows, and we did some blinds. We talked about how to use our masks properly. We made our roof elements that are reusable, and we're using a nice setup here with the switch elements here, the multi-switch, so that we can switch between multiple inputs. So now what we can create is we can create combinations too. If you do this kind of incorrectly, you can get some pretty interesting stuff. So it's not correct, but you can switch it up procedurally, and especially in the distance, no one will really be able to tell. But here, if I were to just choose a couple of them and say, put this to input 1, but leave everything else as different inputs than you're supposed to have, you can come up with some pretty interesting combinations. Now, none of these really appear to be working, but that's because they're designed very specifically for the things that they're designed for. But if you had it into a program that was doing this procedurally in the background, it wouldn't be the end of the world if it was pretty far from camera. But you could safely say, let's mix it up and see what happens. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed very much. Please send me pictures, send me questions if you guys create your own city skyline using this method. And what I'm going to provide for you is the SBSAR file for this, and I'll provide you the FBX for the models. And I will fix the rotation before I do that. And all of these will be available so you can play with it and build your own city skylines. Go nuts. Let me know what you think. And as always, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.